Hello, welcome to the Toronto International Film Festival and to the Q&A recording for Bergman Island by Mia Hansen-Løve, screening as part of our gala section. My name is Andrea Picard and I'm a senior programmer at Tiff, and it's my pleasure to be here today with the film's writer and director, Mia Hansen-Løve. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you.
You're no stranger to Tiff, Mia. We've shown all of your films at the festival. We did a retrospective of your work at the Cinematheque. So we're really pleased to be showing Bergman Island, which is your 7th feature and your first in the English language. It's phenomenal. Congratulations on its success already.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me again, and I wish I would be with you in Toronto.
I know, complicated times, but thank you for your time today. I just wanted to start with Fårö, the island. I know many people have gone also, and I was curious, did you go there first on your own, like Bergman pilgrimage, or to work on a project, or did you go there specifically to make this film?
The first time when I went to Fårö, I already had the idea of writing this film, but I wasn't so sure. So in a way, I went there to see to confront my idea to the experience of the island. There is this thing called the Bergman Week that happens once a year. During a week, they show some films of Bergman and also some other films, and they were inviting me to screen some and introduce some of my films. And I took this chance because I already had the idea of maybe one day writing a film that would be set on Fårö. I took this chance to travel there and see what happens. So that was the first time. And that was a very strong experience. And then I went back the year, or maybe 2 years after, because the year after I was shooting a film. I think that was Things to Come. And so 2 years after I went back, and this time I really wanted to write the film. And so the second time when I went back, I stayed during a month, and I wrote a part of the script there in one of the houses of Bergman where I stayed.
Well, the landscapes are absolutely exquisite. Many of your films, you render the natural world so beautifully. I'm wondering what the landscapes do for your imagination. You seem to have an affinity with nature.
Yes, I think places are always a starting point from not the main, but one of them. I mean, I think they can be un auteur de fiction.
A place of fiction?
I think
a site of fiction?
They're almost like a character to me. What I mean is when I write a story, it's not only about the storyline or, the pitch of it. To me, the atmosphere of the place really is crucial. And I think I've had very organic and affective relationships to places for all of my films, the places that have been inspiring to me, but no place has been as central and as inspiring as Fårö.
To tackle Bergman would be hugely daunting, but the film is not really about that. I mean, it's very much about a woman who can see her life in fiction also. So there's a tremendous sense of freedom. And yet Vicky Krieps' character says when she first arrives that she finds the landscape, that it's too beautiful, it's too oppressive. But you obviously didn't feel that.
Yes, actually, my experience of writing on the island is, I think, different to the one I described about Chris. Although in many ways, you could say I identify myself with her, and I've been through these doubts while I write. I felt often very vulnerable as a script writer. So the doubts of her, the lack of self-confidence is really something that I feel very close to and I identify myself with. But on the other side, and it's surprising maybe, but my experience of writing on Fårö was very different. It was maybe the first time that I actually that for me writing was actually easy, and that suffering was not so much part of the writing process, because it usually is for me. But I never felt as freed and as emancipated as the one time when I was writing on Fårö, and I will always feel, I think, grateful to that place that it allowed me to feel such a great freedom.
And the film is so breezy and enchanting, and then there's such this juxtaposition between the mental landscapes that we have in our mind from Bergman's films. Did you encounter that at all, or no?
Yes, I thought that's something that was interesting for me from the start. When I arrived on Fårö, was that the Fårö that I discovered was very different from the one that I knew from Bergman's film. Of course, on the one hand, you can feel Bergman's presence everywhere, and it's part of what my film is about. Although, as you said, it's maybe not the main subject of the film, but it's still part of that. This how a place can be haunted by the presence of an artist who we admire, and how we deal with that. So, on the one hand, there was this very strong feeling of the omnipresence of Bergman, and on the other hand, I discovered a landscape, a place, a territory that was very, very different. Maybe thanks to the fact that I went there in the summer when you have, wildflowers everywhere. It was extremely sunny. It was very enchanting, extremely nice, I have to say, but very different from the more frightening or dark place that very different from the vision we can have of it through his films, and somehow I think that helped me a lot to find my space on the island, because if the island had been exactly the way you see it in his films, I don't know if Bergman Island would have been possible, but because I looked at it in a different way, or at least I saw a different place, that allowed me to find my own, to have the feeling that there was another story to tell, that there was another way to look at this place than the one way we know from Bergman's films.
And did this inform your decision to shoot in scope?
Yes, that was exactly, because it's interesting, because for a long time I thought I would never film that film in scope. I actually most of the time I don't film in scope. The only film that I had been filming in scope was Eden,
right,
for a very specific reason. But it's not a format that I often am attracted to. And especially for that film, I thought I would not film that way, because that was a format that seemed so different from the films of Bergman. In a way, it seemed too far from his grammar. Although I didn't, it's not like I defined my style and my film only in a relation to the films of Bergman. Of course not, but to me there was something symbolically that for a long time I thought was problematic if I was going to film in scope. And then when I went there and I realized how much the horizon was present for me when I was there, that it was so powerful to be, because it's so flat and you have so much space, and there is so much void also, that the horizon is very present. And when I realized that, and it's not something we had seen in his films, and to me it was a very strong feeling. And that's how I started, actually, together with the DOP of the film, Denis Lenoir, to decide that it made actually sense to film the island like that, and because the island was going to be also a character of the film, to film it and give it a new look, and to give that freshness to the perception of the island really made sense, and that's how it led us to be filming in scope.
Yeah, I mean, it's exquisitely beautiful with all the expanses and the huge sky. There's also a sense of freedom involved, I feel.
Yes, I think that's part of it as well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of that decision too. Yeah.
I want to talk about the discussion. Sorry, am I interrupting you?
No, I meant it's also part of this idea of emancipating. I mean, it's a film about emancipation in many ways, and symbolically, I think deciding to film in scope was part of this process of emancipating myself from the influence of Bergman as well.
And in some ways, the film is also about the creative process. And I think
the connection was bad. The film is also about
the creative process.
The process de création.
Yes.
And I really love the nuances between Chris and Tony. You know, you show this couple that's obviously very tender with one another from the beginning when he's cradling her head in the airplane, but then also the loneliness that they feel in their own sort of paths of creativity. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I think indeed this creative process and how it worked in a couple where they both are writers was really the starting point of the film for me. I said earlier for how important finding this place Fårö in order to be the set of that film was really the moment where it became real for me. But on the other hand, I think long before I even thought of Fårö for the film, I had this idea of making a film one day about a couple of directors, and through that double portrait, actually reflect on what it is to write in a couple and how you can find or not find the right balance between the complicity that you want to have with your partner on the one hand, and on the other hand, the necessary loneliness that it means to be a writer or a filmmaker. You need to have your own private space, and there is a territory within you that the other one cannot go into. And I think you have to accept that distance and difference, and that's difficult. And so there is a tension here between comprehension and complicity and distance that I wanted to study through that film.
And as you mentioned, you set up this double love story, which is part of Chris's film, but then also you have the interjection of the filmmaking, that mise en abîme, which I think does really interesting things to blur the temporal dimension of the film. I'm curious about this choice.
Well, it's something that happened while I was writing there. I think when I went there, I must have an idea that I may open this kind of doors where in the story, and that I would let myself go into the film that she was actually writing. But it's really when I was there that it became obvious, that choice. And I mean, it's been something really intuitive. But my desire was to really try to find the form in the film that would express what it is for me to live and write stories, write films, and live in my imagination as well. And I think that construction with the film within a film, as you call it, mise en abîme, it wasn't ever something theoretical for me. It's just that it felt to be the one construction that allowed me to really catch exactly what it is to live half of your life in fictions, because it's really like this to me. I really feel that there is sometimes a confusion in my life between my everyday life and my films, which are often inspired by things of my everyday life, and I go from one to the other, and it gets mixed in a way that it really creates sometimes a vertigo, where you don't know anymore what's real, what's fiction, where you really, who you really are, where you are. as a person, where is the most of you, what is the more real about you, and I thought that confusion that it creates, but that I wanted to create, because I find this confusion very stimulating, actually very addictive as well. And I think for me, making this film was a way to try to express, to write through the right form what exactly this confusion is. So it creates a confusion on purpose, because that confusion is, I think, part of my writing process.
We're almost out of time, but I really want to ask about the casting. I mean, the cast is superb between Vicky Krieps and Tim Roth, Mia Wasikowska, Anders Danielsen-Lai. Can you talk about these choices?
These are all actors who I admire a lot, for different reasons. I mean, I have a different story for each. Vicky, I discovered her, as many people, when I first saw her in Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson, where she was wonderful. And since that time, I wanted to work with her. Although, I mean, and that was just a couple of months before she got on board on the film, because actually the film was supposed to be with Greta Gerwig, and for some reason, well, you know, Greta Gerwig, she had to direct her own film at the same time, so that happened very quickly. And then when that happened, I didn't have to hesitate for a minute, actually, because Vicky was on my mind as an actress who I wanted to work with one day, but I didn't think that would happen so quickly. She has this balance of vulnerability and self-confidence about her that I found quite unique. She's very luminous, very strong in many ways, but at the same time, she has a lot of sensitivity and softness as well. So she has this very special balance about her presence that I feel very connected to. And also, I thought she had the right type of presence for a filmmaker. I don't think it's something easy to be as an actress. It's not as, I mean, I don't think any actress is it's not only a matter of being a great actress, but could play directors and be credible in that part. And I think Vicky, she had that kind of look and authority about her that I can believe she would write her own films and direct them. As for Mia, she's an actress who I've wanted to work with for a long time. I'm a huge fan of her in many films. But what I like most about her is an innocence that she managed to preserve. Although she's been in many films, she has a lot of experience, but she still has this youth and innocence about her that moves me deeply, and that I find quite unique. Tim, I had seen in many films, of course. I never thought I would work with him, to be honest, just because he was an actor who I admire, but not somebody who I thought I would make a film with. But at some point, there was something about his presence, not so much because of the tough guys that he played in many films, but more about the complexity and the complexity that emanates from him. Because on the one hand, he has this thing of being very masculine, I mean, self-assured, viril. And on the other hand, there is femininity about him, I find, in his way of walking, his way of talking. There is a sensitivity that you cannot see in many films where he played, because he's used to so many bad guys, you know, in films, but that you can see when you meet him. And I'm very sensitive to that, as well as I'm sensitive to the fact that he directed his own film years ago, and that it's a very strong film, and that it's a film that reveals, I think, an interiority about him, but also a suffering, a vulnerability that I somehow I wanted to use somehow in the character, and that helped me believe that he was a director as well. And Anders Danielsen-Lee, I'm also a huge fan of him. Is this Norwegian actor who I had seen also in a couple of films, especially Joachim Trier's first films and Oslo 31 of August. And he's really my type of actor. I don't know how to say it more simply. There is a darkness and a melancholy about him that impressed me a lot. He has this thing of being both very charismatic, but on the other hand, he has, he's also a doctor in his life.
I know.
And he's not only an actor, and it's something I can really see in his way of being, even in front of the camera, that there's something more about him. I don't feel like I'm filming an actor. When I film him, I'm filming a person. Almost that comes almost beforehand to me when I film him, and that's something I enjoy a lot, and that I enjoyed especially for this character.
Okay, I'm slipping in a tiny question. It has to be brief. What's your favorite Bergman film? I had to ask. Do you have one?
I don't have one, but there is one that I have a special relationship to, and I think it's the film called The Touch, which is not his most famous. It's a film with Bibi Andersson and Elliot Gould, one of his only, or his only probably film in English, partly in English because of Elliot Gould's presence in the film.
Yeah, it's just on the Criterion channel, and many people are rewatching it now. Mia, merci beaucoup. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for Bergman. We hope to host you in Toronto with your next film.
Yeah, I hope to, and I hope if I come back, I can come back physically next time. But thank you very much.
Merci, ciao.